A father in Florida has been arrested for DUI manslaughter after a crash severely injured his son and claimed the life of his 5-year-old daughter. We're going to break down the terrifying details of this crash, the investigation, and the selfless act of a heroic bystander. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner, in for Jesse Weber. Hey, so before we jump into this story, I have a very exciting announcement. The video version of Sidebar is now available on Spotify. We're so thankful for your support of Sidebar, and us getting the show on Spotify video truly is a testament to how loyal every single one of you are. So thank you. And yes, you can watch and listen now on the go. From Diddy to the United Healthcare CEO murder case updates to crazy courtroom moments, it's all now on Spotify. So right now you can scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description to follow Sidebar on Spotify. For this heartbreaking story, we go to Lakeland, Florida, where a father is behind bars after he was involved in a car crash back in November that killed his 5-year-old daughter and left his 3-year-old son with severe burns. After weeks of investigation, authorities have released new information that led to the arrest and charges against the children's father, 30-year-old Kody Wills. It all started on November 7th, shortly before 6:30 p.m., when Wills was behind the wheel of his Kia sedan driving his 2 young children, 5-year-old Jolynn and 3-year-old Walker, through an intersection in the northeast corner of Lakeland, Florida. According to the affidavit from the Polk County Sheriff's Office, Kody Joe Wills was operating his 2013 Kia 4-door passenger car on Broadway Street near Lake Parker Drive, Lakeland, Polk County, Florida, when he ran a stop sign and crossed the roadway, striking a tree. In a truly horrific scene, the car immediately burst into flames, catching the attention of a passerby. AJ Slater saw Wills' car engulfed in flames. Police say Slater, who is a 30-year-old former firefighter, jumped out of his car and rushed to help. Slater told the Lakeland Ledger that when he approached the Kia, he saw Wills lying outside the vehicle. Kody Wills was reportedly in distress and called out for help, shouting, "Save my kids." Slater acted quickly and opened one of the back doors of the car, which was already engulfed in flames. Inside, he found 3-year-old Walker strapped into his car seat. He was able to get him out of the car in time. But when he tried to rescue Jolynn, however, the fire and smoke became too overwhelming, making it impossible for him to get close enough to the front seat where the young girl was trapped. By the time first responders arrived to the scene, the damage was already done. Jolynn, a little kindergartner at Winter Haven's Oasis Christian Academy, died in the flames. Her brother Walker, meanwhile, suffered burns to his face and upper body. He was immediately rushed to the hospital, where he would remain for more than a week to receive treatment for his injuries. The Polk County Sheriff's Office said he will have permanent disfigurement from his burns. Wills, who was also injured, was transported to the Lakeland Regional Health Medical Center for treatment of several broken ribs, a broken ankle, and a fractured hip joint. When the investigation into the crash began, authorities made some shocking discoveries. According to the affidavit, deputies noted that Wills did not appear to use the brake before crashing into the tree. Later at the hospital, when the deputy spoke to Wills, a deputy noted signs of recent alcohol consumption. The affidavit reads, quote, "Deputy Register could smell the odor of what he commonly associates with an alcoholic beverage coming from Wills's breath. Additionally, Wills's eyes appeared watery. When asked about the odor of alcohol, Wills admitted he had 1 shot of Maker's Mark alcohol earlier in the afternoon at approximately 1 p.m. Now, if that was truly when Wills had last consumed alcohol, that would have been 5 hours before the fatal crash. Given the circumstances and Wills' appearance, a deputy conducted a horizontal gaze nystagmus test, a standard sobriety test used by law enforcement to assess intoxication. Now, Wills showed 6 signs of impairment during the test, leading the deputy to believe that he was intoxicated at the time of the crash. Due to Wills' injuries, he was unable to perform the standard standing field sobriety test, but the deputy still had enough reason to seek a blood draw, and the results of that blood test were shocking. According to the affidavit, a review of the certified medical records revealed that Kody Joe Wills' medical blood tested positive for ethanol alcohol at a level of 263 milligrams per deciliter. The University of Florida Pathology Laboratory confirmed that Wills' sample tested positive for alcohol at a level of 0.25 grams per deciliter. This is 3 times the legal limit of 0.08 grams per deciliter. According to the Cleveland Clinic, blood alcohol content in this range may cause a person to experience confusion, vomiting, and drowsiness. With this evidence, Kody Wills was arrested on December 31st and charged with DUI manslaughter, DUI causing bodily injury, and 2 counts of negligent child abuse. Now, as for the hero in this case, AJ Slater, he wasn't left unscathed. He was also rushed to the hospital, suffering 2nd and 3rd degree burns to his hands, face, ear, and back. A GoFundMe that was set up by Slater's mother to aid in his recovery reads in part, quote, "He will have extensive medical treatment well after the burns have healed. He doesn't have health insurance, so we are hoping by doing this, he will have some money to cover medical bills, living expenses, and therapy for the trauma he witnessed. I don't think you can ever really get over experiencing something like this. Our heart is broken for the family who experienced such an unthinkable tragedy." The GoFundMe also stated that Slater was hospitalized for nearly 2 weeks, undergoing skin graft surgeries. Even after his release, Slater told the Lakeland Ledger that he continued to struggle with long-term effects of his injuries, including symptoms of gastritis, which is inflammation of the stomach lining. According to reporting from the Ledger, on a positive note, Slater was able to form a bond through this tragedy with the children's mother, Logan Dynas. The outlet reported that Slater and the children's mother have even spoken about launching a campaign to advocate for changes in car seat designs, including emergency release buttons for cases like burning vehicles. When asked about her thoughts on Walker's rescue, Diane simply told the outlet, "If AJ hadn't been there, it would have been a completely different outcome for me. I would not be here talking to you." Diane told the outlet she was playing bingo with friends at a bar in Winter Haven when she first learned of the crash. As Diane and her friend made their way to the hospital, they began searching social media for updates and eventually found a post mentioning that one person had died, but it didn't specify who. After calling Wills' family members, Diane learned that her son Walker was alive, and it was only after that she realized Jolynn had died. A GoFundMe campaign was created to cover hospital and funeral expenses, and it has raised nearly the full $35,000 goal. As for Wills, Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd made it clear that he would be held accountable for his actions and issued the following statement saying, quote, "Nothing will bring this beautiful child back to her family, nor heal the injuries to her brother or the emotional devastation that Kody Wills has caused to so many people. We are confident that we have done everything in our power to ensure Kody Wills is charged appropriately with every felony that he committed and hopeful that justice will be served." According to online records, Wills was booked into Polk County's South County Jail and made his first court appearance on January 1st, where he was denied bond on the DUI manslaughter charge. A truly and very tragic story all around, so I want to bring on now trial litigation lawyer and former prosecutor David Di Pietro. David, thank you so much for joining me today. What's your reaction to this case now that this father, who is charged now with DUI manslaughter for the death of his own daughter, and not only just that she was killed in this crash, but his son was also severely injured? What's your reaction?
It's a very tragic case for which he's going to suffer a many years in prison over this if proven by the state. Florida carries a 4-year minimum mandatory sentence for any DUI manslaughter, but that's just the minimum. I see a case like this based upon the victims, the Good Samaritan victims, his son that was a victim, and the daughter victim, as well as the ex-partner who lost her child. I see him being punished if he were to plea or go to trial upwards of 15 to 25 years, especially in a county like Polk County, which is a rather conservative county in the state of Florida. So I don't see a very good prognosis legally for Mr. Wills at this point.
Yeah, and what are your thoughts on this recklessness, of not only just allegedly driving under the influence, but also with the BAC 3 times the legal limit, but also doing it with your own children in the car?
Yeah, the blood alcohol content being 3 times the legal limit is crazy in the sense of there was an accident. He was transported to the hospital. Multiple hours had passed. A blood draw was done after a search warrant. I mean, the officer had to type up a search warrant, and a prosecutor and a judge had approved that search warrant. Then once it was executed, so much time had passed, and he was 3 times the legal limit, which makes me think he obviously wasn't drinking during that time frame. He was likely higher than 3 times the legal limit when the crash occurred. If you extrapolate backwards, what his blood alcohol content probably was at the time of the accident.
Yeah, and talk to me about DUI manslaughter in the state of Florida. What needs to go into proving a case like this if it does go to trial?
So a lot of people think that you need to prove blood alcohol levels. So blood alcohol content levels only provides a presumption of intoxication. It's not actually required, because some people will refuse to submit to any field sobriety exercises, or will refuse to have a blood or breath alcohol content administered, or urine. So what needs to be proven in Florida is that you were driving under the influence to the extent your normal faculties were impaired, and you caused serious bodily injury or death. So what that basically means is, was your ability to walk and talk and see and function, your normal physical functioning, was that impaired under alcohol to the extent that that you were unable to drive a vehicle? That's the standard. And if you have the blood alcohol content level, that then gives you a presumption that that person was under the influence if they're over 0.08.
And with so much stacked against you, like police smelling that alcohol, as well as seeing this person visibly impaired, I can't imagine putting a case like this even in front of a jury, because it doesn't seem like many jurors will really sympathize with Wills at all. But what are your thoughts on if this case does go to trial? Do you see a jury sympathizing with him in any type of way?
The only way this case would actually go to trial is if for some reason the blood alcohol draw was done illegally or unconstitutionally, and then they didn't have the blood alcohol level presumption. Given that, then they don't have a lot. They have odor of alcohol. He didn't do any field sobriety exercises because of his injuries. And yes, the doctors made some observation that he was intoxicated, but that would make the case much more difficult. So if I were a defense lawyer in his behalf, I would focus my whole case on getting that blood draw taken out as unconstitutional if there's a basis to do it. Otherwise, this case is a plea to the court, beg for mercy type situation.
And I was going to ask too, can the defense truly claim that this was all just a tragic accident? Say, for instance, if the case were to go to trial.
No, I don't think so. I mean, drinking, I think a jury is going to say drinking and driving is in and of itself at that level is problematic. But with your kids in the car makes it really something not desired in our society, that you would drink and drive at that level with your kids in the car. But I guess we all have to remember, like, even if we're in our cars alone, there's other people with their kids in the car. So it's always, drinking and driving is a risk. Nowadays with Uber and Lyft and all these other ways to get around, and really people should focus on not drinking and driving if they've had too much to drink, and really focus on getting home safely.
Exactly. There's always that ride sharing app that is always just available, and it's sometimes hard to fathom that people still will choose the other route in these types of cases, knowing the types of consequences that can really truly happen in this. Do you think that prosecutors could strike a plea deal with Wills in this case?
I do. I don't see it, based on other cases in Florida, I don't see it being less than 15 years, four of which will be minimum mandatory, which he'll have to serve day for day. And then any years over that, he'd have to serve 85% of his sentence in Florida, as we don't have parole in Florida. So Florida is, you served your time in prison, the best you can get is 15% off your sentence, and then you're released. At a minimum, I see 15 years, but in a county like Polk County, I could easily see it being a 25-year type sentence.
And what's your reaction also to kind of the heroism kind of displayed in this case as well too, when you have that bystander who really kind of help or kind of risk their own lives in order to save these children, which is just great, given that the young boy did survive through this crash. But what are your thoughts on the bystander and their actions to help save these children?
Yeah, so A.J. Slater is definitely a hero to save these children, deserves an award. Just a good person, and then he suffered, serious burns as a result. But I'm sure he doesn't regret it one bit. And just as an aside, he probably has a civil action against whatever insurance that Wills has, or any insurance policies that are available, because he was injured as a result of this accident and being a good Samaritan. So, kudos to him, and being a hero. And it's good that we have people like that in our society.
And David, I want to ask you, let's take the children out of this equation. Do you think that Wills would still face charges had he just crashed the car with no children inside? Do you think he would still be facing kind of the severity of charges? Obviously not DUI manslaughter, if the children are kind of taken out of this equation. But what are your thoughts on just the consequences he would have faced alone had the children not even been in the car, but he'd still crashed?
That's the crazy thing about DUI. It goes from a misdemeanor to a serious felony in a hiccup. Meaning, if he would have just been in the car alone and crashed into a tree and hurt himself, it would have been a misdemeanor. If they would have even charged him because maybe he was too injured to even do a DUI investigation, he might have just gone to the hospital and nothing happened. But at worst, it would have been a significant misdemeanor where he probably would have got probation, maybe some minor level of jail time. So it goes from minor level of jail time to somebody dying and other people being seriously injured to looking at like a life term in prison. That's the interesting quandary with DUI. Many people get convicted of DUI and they're good people and bad things happen and then they move on in their life, and then some the first time they commit DUI it's a life altering, changing scenario.
Yeah, and as a former prosecutor who may have spoke with victims' families during kind of cases like this, my heart goes out to the children's mother in this case, who by all accounts probably just thought that their children together were safe with their father. But what do you think she's going through dealing just with this tragic, horrific event that happened?
Totally devastating. I mean, it's life changing. She'll probably have PTSD from this. This is like something that you don't want to ever see another human being go through. Is not only has she lost a child, she has another child who's burned and severely hurt, who's going to have emotional damage. It's going to be life altering. Hopefully she'll have the resources to seek help and counseling, because this is not an easy thing. Hopefully she has family support too, because this is not something easily, it's something that you easily move on from in life. This is very tragic.
And I'm sure, tragic all around as well, too. And I'm sure this will carry with Wills probably for the rest of his life, as well as her life as well, too. David Di Pietro, I want to thank you so much for your insight into this case. But before we sign you off, though, where do you think the case goes from here?
He's entitled to bond in Florida because the only offenses are offenses that you're punishable by life, which is not a punishable by life sentence. But I have a feeling the bond's going to be astronomical with terms. Even if he can get them financially, he'll be basically in home confinement. So I see him more likely being led into custody. He'll be stuck in custody, and the case will probably linger through the system for about a year, and then we'll probably hear about this case at the end of the year, early next year. If that blood alcohol draw is legitimate under the Constitution, I see him receiving a very heavy sentence.
David, again, thank you so much for your insight into this. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Well, that does it for this episode of Sidebar. If you want to listen to more, be sure to subscribe to us anywhere you listen to your podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. I'm Elizabeth Millner, in for Jesse Weber, who will be back on Monday, and this has been Sidebar presented by Law&Crime.